Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Affairs and CARICOM Affairs. Honorable N.C. Hubert Charles, Ambassador, Advisor to the Minister for Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs. Permanent Secretaries, Mr. Gerard Kozlatik, Honorary Consul of Japan, senior government officials, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I take this opportunity to welcome you to the signing ceremony between the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica and the government of Japan for Japanese grant aid assistance under the Japanese Economic and Social Development Program to the tune of 220 million Japanese yen or $2 million US. Ambassador Mitsuhiko, I welcome you to Dominica. I also extend special welcome to the second secretary who has accompanied you to Dominica. Indeed, Ambassador, your government is a friend of the government of and people of Dominica. Post-tropical storm Erika, you arrived on island, even though you had not presented your credentials as Japan's ambassador to Dominica. Again, after Hurricane Maria, you visited with members of your diplomatic staff on the 29th of September and presented relief items to communities badly affected by this monster storm. Today, as the government and people of Dominica take on the challenge to build the world's first climate resilient nation, an agreement will be signed for the provision of disaster reduction equipment, which will no doubt assist in the preparation of mitigation measures and also assist in building the capacity of the government of Dominica as we strive to achieve the goal of being a resilient nation. Ladies and gentlemen, with these few words, I would like to welcome all of you here present this morning to this ceremony. At this moment, ladies and gentlemen, I will invite His Excellency, Ambassador Mitsuhiko Okada, to give us some remarks. Let's welcome him.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Honorable Francine Baron, Minister for Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs. Honorable Rayburn Blackmore, Minister for Justice, Immigration and National Security. Your Excellency Hubert Charles, Ambassador Advisor to the Minister for Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs. Mrs. Sylvanie Burton, Permanent Secretary, Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs. Mrs. Rosamond Edwards, Financial Secretary. Permanent Secretaries, Mr. Gerard Kozlatik, Honorary Consul of Japan. Senior government officials, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my great honor to be here today as a representative of the government of Japan for the signing ceremony for Japanese grant aid under the Economic and Social Development Program. This grant is provided in order to help enhance the Commonwealth of Dominica's capacity to respond to climate change and is valued at 220 million yen or approximately $2 million US. The government of Japan is committed to supporting developing nations in enhancing their resilience to climate change. Japan, as a proactive contributor to world peace and stability, and as a nation with many small islands, has been active in tackling climate change issues. At COP21 in December 2015, Japan announced Actions for Cool Earth, or ACE 2.0, a new initiative for supporting action in developing countries to address climate change. Under this initiative, Japan will provide 1.3 trillion yen, the equivalent of about $12 billion US in climate change finance to developing nations in the year 2020, covering renewable energy production, resilient infrastructure, and a variety of other mitigation efforts. Japan fully recognizes the vulnerability of small island nations in the Caribbean. For the Commonwealth of Dominica in particular, the government of Japan delivered emergency supplies twice in 2 years. First after Tropical Storm Erika, and second after Hurricane Maria. In addition, Japan has just signed an exchange of notes with UNDP for a project that aims to strengthen the disaster management capacity of women in the Commonwealth of Dominica. The grant agreement to be signed today is a part of Japan's global efforts to support developing countries in responding to climate change. This grant will be used to purchase equipment such as generators, water pumps, sleeping cots, a response vehicle, and telecommunication equipment, which will help enhance the command and logistical capability of the Commonwealth of Dominica's national disaster management system. I believe that the procured equipment will also help the government and people of Dominica in recovering from the damages inflicted by Hurricane Maria and enhance their preparedness against future extreme weather events. Ladies and gentlemen, Japan and the Commonwealth of Dominica have long enjoyed and benefited from friendly relations, and this granted is a good indicator of the strength of our relations. Our government have been accustomed to cooperating in international fora and exchanging and sharing opinions on various issues. Today's ceremony demonstrates how strong bilateral relations are built. The government of Japan looks forward to many more opportunities for development cooperation between Japan and the Commonwealth of Dominica. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. We will now have some brief remarks by Honorable Raymond Blackmore, Minister for National Security, who is also responsible for disaster management.
Thank you very much, Madam Permanent Secretary, my colleague Minister, Honorable Francine Barron, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Planning, Your Excellency Ambassador Mr. Hubert Charles, and of course, the Japanese Ambassador to the Commonwealth of Dominica. Special welcome to you again to this beautiful country. I think I met you a month ago, and it was an honor to have met you, and it's again an honor to meet you this month again. I also want to recognize, I want to say senior and most distinguished, Mr. Gerald Kuzlatig, other senior members of the public service. I see members from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and members of the media fraternity. Good morning to all. This morning event and this grant aid signing ceremony this morning is yet again another demonstration of the commitment of the Japanese government to Dominica's overall development. There's a long history of functional cooperation between these two countries. And over the years, the government and people of Japan have actually been very much instrumental in assisting us in forging our way forward. Over the years, the Japanese government has made available to us in Dominica in excess of $51 million for the development of various fisheries complex facilities over the country, namely Marigot, Roseau, and of course a vast number of other initiatives that the government of Japan has contributed towards our development. Improvement of human resource components. They have partnered with us, of course, giving support to a number of primary schools as well as secondary school, including the community high school. And for that, we are very much grateful. This morning event is very significant for us, especially post-Maria. You heard from our Prime Minister our commitment to making this country the first climate-resilient country in the world. It is going to be a long and difficult track. And therefore, we're going to need the support of all our friendly governments and friends. And the provision of this equipment will further assist us in ensuring that we embark in a very practical way on issues of mitigation and disaster management, especially from the community level. I do not think that words can express, Your Excellency, our appreciation for your commitment to our development. I can recall after the passage of Erika, most of us had said then that Erika was the worst storm in the history of Dominica's development, but we were wrong. We're now saying that Maria was the worst hurricane ever to strike us in Dominica, and ever to actually strike any country in the world. I have not heard of any Category 5 in excess of a Category 5 hurricane, because a lot of us who actually experienced the event can attest to the fact that, especially those of us who lived during Hurricane David, people in here who must be as old as I am would have experienced Hurricane David. And Hurricane Maria was a super hurricane in comparison to Hurricane David. And some of us would have said on the night of the 18th of September that maybe the winds were in excess of 200 miles per hour. So I've not heard thus far any country having to realize such a beating from a hurricane. So I think that Japan is a very good friend of ours. Going back to the passage of Erika, I think the government of Japan was among the first countries to actually respond in a very practical way. I can recall meeting, I think at the time, the Minister for Foreign Affairs at the airport in Kingsfield. And I think maybe you were the highest first official from a friendly government to have arrived in Dominica, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to actually express my gratitude to you for your commitment to our development. I have been advised here this morning that I'm allowed to give brief remarks. I intend, therefore, to stick to that protocol or that instruction. And what I'm left to say is that we in Dominica have to ensure that we build back a better country. And in order to do that, we have to develop the mindset and the attitude in order to do that. And so, whereas we need the tools to do that, but I can give you the commitment that from what I've seen thus far, that we abide into the whole concept that Dominica will become the first climate resilient country of the world. And it's going to be easier for us with practical support from countries like you. So I wish you all the best, Your Excellency. I know you love Dominica, and I'm looking forward to having you again very soon. That maybe a bigger basket of goodies. So may the good Lord bless you, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. At this moment, I will invite Honorable Francine Barron, the Minister for Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs, to address us. Let's welcome, Minister.
Thank you, PS. Let me first recognize Honorable Rayburn Blackmore, Minister for Justice, Immigration and National Security, His Excellency Mitsuhiko Okada, Ambassador of Japan to the Commonwealth of Dominica, Your Excellency Hubert Charles, Ambassador and Advisor to Minister of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs, Mrs. Silvani Burton, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs, Permanent Secretaries, Mr. Jared Kuzlatek, Honorary Consul of Japan, senior government officials, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, the listening public at home and abroad, good morning. We are delighted to welcome Ambassador Okada and his second secretary, Mr. Kobayashi, to Dominica, and we are especially pleased that he is here to sign an agreement for the provision of grant aid under the Japanese government's Economic and Social Development Program. He will also conduct a short seminar with us on Japan's overseas development assistance. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware that the Commonwealth of Dominica has a great challenge in dealing with the after effects of the devastation caused by that monster Hurricane Maria last September. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit has clearly articulated that our response will be not only to build back better, but to execute a plan to make Dominica the world's first climate resilient nation. This is not an idle hope. The government has embarked on a plan to ensure that we achieve that goal. A climate resilient strategy for Dominica is being developed with the assistance of our development partners, and we look forward to the financial and technical assistance of all our partners in undertaking that task. In the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Maria, Japan was among the first to respond to our appeal for much-needed emergency relief supplies. Ambassador Okada was extremely concerned. He mobilized support and personally flew into Dominica to hand over relief items. Ambassador, we appreciate your support in our time of need and the leadership that you have shown. Additionally, I must highlight here that thanks to Ambassador Okada's efforts and keen interest in Dominica's recovery in the quickest possible time, Japan again joined with the international community in pledging further support for Dominica and other Caribbean islands affected by the hurricanes during the pledging conference held recently in New York. For this, Ambassador, the government and people of Dominica are very grateful. Japan has been one of our main bilateral partners, assisting not only Dominica, but the entire Caribbean region in the area of disaster risk reduction. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction was endorsed by the UN General Assembly following the 3rd UN World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction hosted by Japan in Sendai City in 2015. The Sendai Framework, which is a 15-year voluntary non-binding agreement, recognizes that the state has a primary role to reduce disaster risk, but that responsibility should be shared with other stakeholders. We would therefore like to reiterate our appreciation to the government of Japan for the crucial role that Japan has played in taking the lead on the development of this framework and in its implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, today's signature of the exchange of notes between the government of Japan and the government of Dominica for the provision of disaster reduction equipment adds an important dimension to the strong and fruitful relations that exist between our two countries. This grant of 220 million yen, or $2 million worth of disaster reduction equipment, goes beyond Japan's initial provision of emergency support. It will strengthen our capacity to pre-position vital pieces of equipment and thus enable us to respond quickly in the event of future disasters. It is well known that over the years, Japan's official development assistance to Dominica has been significant. It has covered technical cooperation, including JICA training provided to Dominican nationals in Japan in a range of subject areas, as well as assignment of Japanese volunteers under the Japanese Overseas Cooperation Volunteers Program. Assistance has also been provided by the government of Japan through its grassroots human security projects, beneficiaries of which include the Dominica Association of Persons with Disabilities, the Community High School, Goodwill, Trafalgar, and Granophore primary schools, as well as the communities of Fokule and Bagatelle. Dominica has also benefited from Japan's grant aid for the provision of industrial products in the amount of $1 million, aimed at providing rapid support to improve our economic structure. Of course, as we all know, the most visible area of Japanese support for infrastructural development in Dominica involves the provision of fishing complexes under the Fisheries Grant Aid Program. To date, Japan has also provided in excess of US $51 million to government under this important program. I'm also advised by the ambassador that they will also send a technical mission to Dominica in the not too distant future. They will visit these fisheries complexes to determine what further support they could provide to us. So, Ambassador, we also are very pleased that an agreement has been signed between Japan and the UNDP to provide $5 million in support to undertake projects in both Guyana and Dominica to strengthen disaster management of amongst women in our communities. I think we all know that we have very strong single women households in Dominica, many women who are involved in small businesses, and they need to be able to ensure that their businesses and their livelihoods take into account the necessity to be resilient where disasters are concerned. And so I believe that grant aid from the Japanese government will assist them in that regard. And we thank you, Ambassador, for that very kind gesture of your government. So, Ambassador, today we welcome you not as an occasional visitor, but as a friend who is committed to accompanying us along the path to growth, social development, and resilience building. We are painfully aware that climate change is real. The international community has pledged to adhere to the provisions and mandates of the Paris Agreement regarding support for resilience building in small states to allow us to adapt and mitigate against the harmful effects of climate change. This must be actioned as a matter of urgency. The evidence is already abroad that time is not on our side. Indeed, with each passing day, we move closer to another hurricane season, which will further expose our vulnerability. We are satisfied, though, that with committed friends such as Japan, we can build the structures and strengthen the national ethos that is required for greater resilience. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your time and attention, and I once again thank the government and people of Japan for their continued support to the Commonwealth of Dominica. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and we will now have the signing of the documents. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the signing ceremony. But let me take this opportunity to thank again Ambassador Okada and his staff for being here, and to thank the government and people of Japan for the assistance granted to Dominica at this time of need. I also want to thank our honorable ministers who are here with us this morning. I know that Minister Blackmore had to do something to be here this morning. So, Minister, special thanks to you. Thank you to all of you who have come, and thanks to the media, who I think will definitely disseminate the information to the rest of Dominica and to the rest of the world. Once again, thank you very much.